How long? Emily said. Her voice had gone flat. It was the flatness of a woman who had heard bad news before and had learned to strip all the feeling out of her voice the moment it arrived, because feeling was a luxury and information was survival. The window's not fixed yet, Nathan said. That's the honest answer. Could be 4 months, could be 6. It's not tomorrow, it's not even next month. But it's real, Emily, and it's coming, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend I might not have to leave, because that's exactly the kind of lie that turns a man into the second door. The second door, Emily repeated. Yeah. You keep saying that, the second door, like you've thought about it a lot. I have, Nathan said. I thought about your boy watching the driveway, and I thought the worst thing I could do to that kid isn't staying away. Staying away, he never knows me, and I'm just one more grown-up who didn't stick. That's a small hurt. He's got a whole collection of those. But if I come in, if I let him start to count on me, if I become someone he watches the driveway for, and then I leave even for good reasons, even because the Navy told me to, and not because I chose to, he won't know the difference. To a kid, a leaving is a leaving. That's the door I'm scared of being, not staying away, coming close and then going. There was a long silence on the line. Emily was quiet so long that Nathan started to think she'd made her decision, that she was working up the words to say goodnight and mean it forever. You want to know something, she finally said. That right there, what you just said, that's the reason I'm not hanging up. I don't follow. Every man before you, Emily said, either didn't think about my kids at all, or thought about them just long enough to figure out they were a reason to leave. You're the first one who thought about my kids so hard that you tried to leave for their sake. Do you understand how backwards that is? You're standing at my door trying to protect my son from you by walking away, and it's the most anybody's tried to protect him in 3.5 years. Her voice cracked. The bar is on the floor, Nathan. You have no idea how low the bar is, and you just tripped over it going up. Nathan closed his eyes. That's not a compliment to the world, Emily. No, she agreed. It's not. But it's the truth, and we said we'd only tell each other the truth. He heard her take a breath, gathering herself, and when she spoke again, the flatness was gone, and something firmer had taken its place. Here's what I need, she said. I'm going to say it once, and I need you to take it seriously because it's not a request. It's the whole thing. It's everything. I'm listening. You don't meet them yet. Not yet. We see each other, you and me, on my nights off, which God help us both are almost none, but we'll find them. You don't come to my house. You don't meet Liam and Grace. Not until I know. Not until I'm sure. Her voice was iron now. Because I can survive you leaving Nathan. I've been left before. I've got calluses on the parts of me that would break. But Liam doesn't have those calluses yet. He's 9. If he lets you in and you go, that's a wound he carries into every relationship he ever has for the rest of his life. And I will not let a man do that to my son again. Not even a good one. Especially not a good one, because the good one would hurt worse. That's fair, Nathan said quietly. That's completely fair. So we take it slow. We take it so slow it's almost not moving. And if the deployment comes and it's real, then we'll know something. We'll know whether we're the kind of thing that survives distance, or whether we're just two tired people who liked how it felt to be understood for one dinner. She let out a shaky breath. That's my offer. That's the only version of this I can do. I accept, Nathan said without a second's hesitation. All of it, every word. Just like that. Just like that. You're protecting your kid. Emily, I'd be worried about you if you didn't set that line. The fact that you drew it that hard, that fast, that's not you being difficult. That's you being exactly the mother I'd want in the foxhole with me. He paused. And it tells me something about you too. What does it tell you? That you'll do the same thing for Sophie someday if it comes to it. Draw the line that hard for a kid that isn't yours. He heard her breath catch. That's the whole game, isn't it? That's the only thing that matters. Whether a person will step in front of a kid that didn't come from them. You just showed me you would, and we haven't even started. Emily didn't answer for a moment. When she did, her voice was very soft, "You're going to be a problem for me, Nathan Cole," she said. "I can already tell." "Yeah," Nathan said, and she could hear the smile in it. "I've been called worse." They kept the line for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of stolen phone calls after the kids were asleep, of texts sent from the office building. She cleaned at 11 at night, of 2 dinners, squeezed into the narrow gaps of a life with no gaps. Nathan learned the rhythm of her exhaustion. Learned that if he called before 9, she'd be short and distracted because she was still doing the second shift of motherhood, dishes and lunches and laundry. But if he called after 10:30, she'd finally sit down on the edge of her bed and become a different person. Funnier, softer, a woman instead of a machine. He learned that she hummed when she was tired, that she pretended not to like being taken care of, and then went quiet and pleased whenever he did it anyway. He learned that she had a laugh she used in public, and a different laugh, lower and more surprised, that she only made when something genuinely got past her defenses, and he became quietly competitively obsessed with earning that second laugh. And Emily learned things too. She learned that Commander Nathan Cole, who could order 100 sailors around a ship, could not for the life of him braid his daughter's hair, and had watched 6 YouTube videos about it, and had gotten so frustrated one morning that Sophie had patted his hand and said, "It's okay, Daddy. Mrs. Reyes at school will fix it," which had wrecked him for the entire day. She learned that he called his friend Dawson Chief, even off duty out of habit, and that Dawson called him at odd hours just to make sure he'd eaten. She learned that he still set 2 coffee cups out some mornings, and only realized halfway through that he'd done it 3 years later and had to put the second one away. "You still do that?" she asked one night gently. "Less than I used to," Nathan said. "It used to be every morning. Now it's maybe once a week. I don't know if that means I'm healing or forgetting, and I can't decide which one would be worse." "Healing," Emily said. "It means healing. Forgetting would be if you stopped noticing you'd done it." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "Nobody's ever put it that way." "That's because nobody's ever asked you the right questions," Emily said. "You're surrounded by men who'd take a bullet for you, and not one of them would ask you how you take your grief in the morning. And you would. I already did." But 6 weeks is a long time to keep a 9-year-old from noticing that his mother has started smiling at her phone. Liam noticed. Of course he noticed. Liam noticed everything. It was the terrible gift the driveway had given him, the hypervigilance of a child who'd learned that the world could rearrange itself without warning, and that his only defense was to watch it every second. He noticed that his mother laughed in her room at night now. He noticed that she'd bought a new shirt, the first new shirt in 2 years, and had held it up in front of the mirror, looking uncertain and hopeful in a way that made his stomach hurt. He noticed she left the house twice in 6 weeks after dark, and came home glowing, and that scared him more than anything, because his mother didn't glow. His mother was tired. His mother was safe, because she was tired, because a tired mother stayed home, and a glowing mother might go somewhere he couldn't follow. He waited until Grace was in the bath, splashing and singing to herself, and then he came and stood in the kitchen doorway, while his mother scrubbed a pot she'd already scrubbed clean. "Is it the Navy guy?" Liam said. Not a question. A verdict. Emily's hands went still in the sink. "You're still talking to him," Liam said. "The one from dinner. Nathan." Emily turned around, slowly drying her hands on a towel, buying herself 2 seconds to figure out how to do this right. There was no manual for this. There was no right way. There was only her son's face closed and braced, and the truth which she had promised him she would always tell. "Yes," she said. "I'm still talking to him." "You said it was probably nothing." "I know I did." "So you lied." "No," Emily said, and she crossed the kitchen and crouched down so she was below him, looking up because she'd read somewhere that you should never loom over a scared child, and she'd never forgotten it. "I didn't lie. When I said that I believed it, I thought it was probably nothing. But then it turned out to be something, and the second it turned into something real, I was going to tell you. I've been figuring out how. That's what I've been doing, bud. Trying to figure out how to tell you in a way that wouldn't scare you." "I'm not scared," Liam said, which was the thing he always said and the thing that was never true. "Okay," Emily said gently. "Then, can I tell you about him?" "Just tell you. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to meet him. You don't have to like him. I just want to tell you who he is because you're the most important person in my life, and you deserve to know what's happening in it. Is that okay?" Liam stood there, jaw tight, arms crossed, the exact posture of a much older and more disappointed man. And then, grudgingly, he gave a single short nod. Emily sat down right there on the kitchen floor, and after a second, Liam sat down across from her, and this felt important, the two of them on the floor, at the same height, no one above the other. "His name is Nathan," she said. "He's in the Navy. He's a commander, which is a pretty big deal. And he has a little girl named Sophie. She's 6, and her mom died when she was little. So Nathan is raising her all by himself, the same way I'm raising you and Grace by myself." Liam's arms loosened, just slightly. "His wife died." "Yeah, baby. She got very sick and the doctors couldn't fix it and she died. And Sophie doesn't really remember her because she was so little." Liam thought about that. Emily watched him think, watched the wheels turn, behind the two old eyes, and she could see him doing the thing he did, sorting, categorizing, filing new information into the enormous and constantly updated map he kept of all the ways the world could hurt you. "That's different," Liam said slowly. "From us." "How do you mean?" "His wife didn't want to leave. She got sick. That's not the same as—" He stopped. He didn't say Danny's name. He never said Danny's name. "That's not the same as when somebody just decides to." And Emily's heart broke quietly, the way it broke a little more every time her son revealed how much of this he understood, how carefully he'd separated the world into people who left because they had to, and people who left because they wanted to. "You're right," she said. "It's not the same. But you know what's the same? Nathan knows what it's like to be scared for his kid. He knows what it's like to lie awake at night wondering if he's doing enough. He knows what it feels like to be the only one." She reached out, and when Liam didn't pull away, tucked a piece of his hair back. "That's why I like him, bud. Not because he's handsome or because he's got a fancy job. Because when I told him about you and Grace, he didn't get that look. What look? The look grown-ups get when they realize I come with kids, like they're doing math. You've seen it." Liam's face flickered, and she knew he had seen it more than once on more than one man's face over the years. The flicker of calculation, the polite retreat. "He didn't do the math," Emily said. "He asked me your names, before anything else. Before he asked how old you were or anything, he asked what your names were. Yours and Grace's." Liam was quiet for a long moment. "That's a weird thing to ask," he finally said. "I thought so too." "Why'd he ask that?" "I don't know," Emily said honestly. I think because to him, you were real people from the very first second. Not a problem. Not baggage. People with names, Liam and Grace." Her son sat on the kitchen floor and absorbed this. In the bathroom, Grace had progressed from singing to full narration, giving her rubber ducks distinct and quarrelsome personalities, and the ordinary sound of it filled the silence. "I don't want to meet him," Liam said at last. "Okay? Not never. Just not yet." He looked at the floor. "Is that okay? Is that allowed?" "That's not just allowed," Emily said. "That's exactly what I told him. I said you don't meet my kids until I'm sure. I drew a line, bud. I told him he doesn't get anywhere near you or Grace until I know he's the real thing." And you know what he said? "What?" "He said he'd be worried about me if I didn't draw that line. He said a good mom protects her kids first, and me protecting you the way I am, that made him trust me more, not less." Liam looked up at her, and for one unguarded second, she saw something on his face that she hadn't seen in a very long time. Not trust. It was too soon for trust, and Liam didn't hand trust out anymore. But underneath the wariness, just for a flicker, there was the thing that came before trust. There was curiosity, a crack in the wall, and a little bit of light coming through it. "He said that," Liam said. "He said that." Liam pulled his knees up. Okay, he said. You can keep talking to him. But I get to decide when I meet him. Me, not you. And if I say I'm not ready, you can't make me. Deal, Emily said instantly. 100% deal. You have complete control over that, I promise. Swear it. I swear it. On, she thought about what would matter most to him. On Grace. That was the biggest thing she owned, and Liam knew it, and his eyes went wide for a second, before he nodded satisfied because his mother would never swear on Grace and break it. Okay, he said again, and got up off the floor and then stopped in the doorway. Emily watched him hesitate, watched some further question working its way up. Mom, he said, not turning around. The deployment, on the boat. You said the Navy makes him go away for a long time. Emily's stomach tightened. Sometimes, yeah. Is he going away? And there it was. The thing she'd been dreading. She could lie. It would be so easy to lie, to say, I don't know, bud. We'll see. Don't worry about that. But she'd sworn on Grace's name to tell this boy the truth, and she wasn't going to start a relationship built on protecting him with a lie told to protect herself. Maybe, she said. There's a chance he has to leave for a few months. It's part of his job. He doesn't get to choose. Liam stood very still in the doorway. So he's gonna leave, he said, flatly. The verdict again. He might have to go, Emily said. For work, and then come back. That's different from leaving Liam. That's really different. It's not different, Liam said. Not to me, it's not. And he walked down the hall to his room and shut the door. Not a slam. Just a quiet, final click, which was so much worse than a slam. And Emily sat alone on her kitchen floor, with the sound of it, and understood that her son had just told her the truest and most terrible thing about himself. To Liam, there was no difference between a man who left and a man who had to go. A departure was a departure. An empty driveway was an empty driveway. He had learned that lesson at 5 years old, and no one, not even the kindest commander in the United States Navy, was going to unteach it easily. She told Nathan that night. She told him all of it. The kitchen floor, the crack in the wall, the curiosity, and then the door clicking shut. He said it's not different to him, Emily finished. Going or leaving. He said they're the same thing. Nathan was quiet on the line for a long time. He's right, he finally said. Nathan. No, listen. He's right, Emily. From where he's standing, he's completely right. I've been telling myself the deployment is different because I don't choose it. Because the Navy orders me and I obey. But that's a distinction that matters to me. It's a distinction that lets me off the hook. To a 9-year-old staring at an empty spot where a grown-up used to be, my reasons don't mean anything. The chair's empty either way. He exhaled. That kid just cut straight through 3 months of excuses I've been telling myself. He's smarter than both of us. So what do? We don't lie to him, Nathan said. That's the first thing. We never ever tell him a deployment is nothing, or that I'll definitely be back by a certain day, or any of the promises that sound comforting and turn into betrayals the second the Navy changes the plan. I've made those promises before, Emily. To Claire. To Sophie. I told Sophie I'd be home for her 4th birthday, and I missed it by 3 weeks. Because a mission ran long and she doesn't remember it, but I do, and I swore I'd never make a promise about a homecoming date again. Then what can you promise him? If you can't promise you'll be back by a date, if you can't promise you won't have to go, what's left? Nathan was quiet thinking, and when he spoke his voice was slow and careful. A man laying each word down like he was diffusing something. The only thing I can promise a kid like that, he said, is the one thing his dad never gave him. I can promise him that if I go, it's not because I stopped wanting to be there. I can promise that going and leaving are different in exactly one way that matters. A man who leaves stops thinking about you the second he's gone. A man who goes thinks about you every single day and counts the ones until he's back. I can't promise Liam I'll always be in the driveway. Nobody can promise a kid that. It's a lie every time. But I can promise him that when I'm not in the driveway, it's because I'm somewhere wishing I was. He paused. That's the whole difference between me and Danny Emily. It's the only difference that's real. And it's the only one worth teaching that boy. Emily sat on the edge of her bed with the phone pressed to her ear and found that she couldn't speak because he'd just said the thing she'd been trying and failing to explain to her son for 3.5 years. And he'd said it better than she ever had, and he'd said it about a boy he had never even met. "You still there?" Nathan asked. "I'm here," she managed. You keep doing that." "Doing what?" "Saying the thing I've been trying to say for years, about Liam, about Danny, about all of it. You keep saying it back to me clearer than I could." She wiped her face. "It's very annoying, Nathan. I want you to know that. I had a whole system for being alone and you're ruining it." "Good," he said softly. "Ruin mine too. I set out 2 coffee cups this morning again, first time in a month. And I stood there looking at the second cup, and for the first time, I didn't feel sad about it. I felt like maybe someday it wouldn't have to go back in the cabinet." Neither of them said anything for a moment. It was the closest either of them had come to naming the thing that was happening between them, and they both let it sit there unnamed, because naming it felt like daring the world to take it away. The break in the wall widened slowly over the following weeks, not because anyone forced it, but because a 9-year-old's curiosity is a stubborn living thing, and Liam couldn't help himself. He started asking questions. He'd ask them sideways, pretending he didn't care, pretending he was asking about something else. "Does his boat have guns on it?" he asked one night at dinner, mouth full, not looking up. "I think so," Emily said carefully. "It's a Navy ship, but he doesn't really talk about that part. He mostly talks about he's kind of the guy in charge of keeping everybody safe. Everybody who... his whole crew, like 100 people, maybe more. It's his job to make sure they all come home." Liam chewed on this along with his food. "That's a lot of people to keep safe." "It is." A few nights later, "Does Sophie have a mom now, like a new one?" "No, baby. It's just her and her dad." "So she's got a dad and no mom, and I've got a mom and no dad." Liam pushed his peas around. "That's kind of the opposite." Emily kept her voice very even. "Yeah," she said. "I guess it kind of is." "If you put us together, we'd have both," Liam said, and then immediately looked horrified that he'd said it out loud and jammed a huge bite of food in his mouth so he wouldn't have to say anything else, and refused to make eye contact for the rest of dinner. Emily had to get up and go to the sink so he wouldn't see her face, because if he saw her cry, he'd panic, and she was not crying because she was sad. She was crying because her guarded, wounded, driveway-watching son had just done a piece of math out loud. The same math Sophie had done with her crayons, the same math about a fourth person, and had frightened himself with the answer. She told Nathan that night, and Nathan went so quiet she thought the call had dropped. "Nathan, Sophie asked me to draw a family last month," he said, his voice strange. "She left an empty space in the picture. She said it was for the fourth person. For when we find them." He let out a breath that shook. "Your boy just did the same math from the other side of town. Neither of them has met the other. They don't know the other one exists, and they're both sitting there doing arithmetic about a family that doesn't exist yet." "I know," Emily whispered. "I keep thinking, what if we're the only 2 people who can't see it? What if the kids already figured it out, and we're the slow ones?" "Kids are always the fast ones," Nathan said. "We're the ones who got scared and learned to be slow." He paused. "Emily, I think it might be time." Her whole body tensed. "For what?" "For me to meet him. Liam. On his terms completely, his terms whenever he decides, however he wants it. I'm not pushing. You set the line, and it's your line to move, not mine. But that boy is asking questions about a man he's never met. He's curious. And you told me the day the curiosity showed up was the day the wall cracked. If we wait too long, that crack might close back up, and he'll decide on his own that I'm just one more grown-up he was smart not to trust." Nathan's voice was gentle but sure. "I'd rather he meet the real me and decide for himself than build a story about me in his head that I never get a chance to answer." Emily sat with that for a long moment. "I have to ask him," she said. "It's his call. I swore on Grace." I wouldn't have it any other way. So the next evening, on the kitchen floor again at the same height, no one looming over anyone, Emily asked her son the biggest question she'd asked him in 3.5 years. "Liam," she said, "Nathan would like to meet you. Whenever you want, however you want. You pick the place, you pick how long, and if you want to leave after 5 minutes, we leave, no questions, and I'll never bring it up again." She held his gaze. "But only if you want to. This is completely your choice. I swore it and I meant it. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for." Liam looked at the floor for a long time. She could see him running at every angle, every risk, every possible way this could go wrong. 9 years old and running threat assessments like a man 3 times his age. Would Grace come? He finally asked. "If you wanted her to, or not. Your call." And Sophie, his kid. "Not the first time. Just you, if that's what you want. Just you and me and Nathan, somewhere in public, somewhere you feel safe and you can leave any time." Liam pulled his knees up to his chest, and for a moment he looked very small and very young, the 9-year-old, under the 40-year-old worry. "What if I don't like him?" he said. "Then you don't like him, and that's the end of it." "What if I do like him?" Liam said quieter, and this Emily understood instantly. This was the real fear. Not that Nathan would be bad, that Nathan would be good. That Liam would let himself want something and then lose it the way he'd wanted his father, and lost him the way you learn not to want anything at all, because wanting is just the setup for the fall. Emily didn't rush to reassure him. She'd learned that too, that empty reassurance was a kind of lie, and Liam could smell a lie at 40 paces. "That's the scary one, huh?" she said softly. "Liking him. That's scarier than not liking him." Liam's eyes filled, and he nodded, furious at himself, swiping at his face with the back of his hand. "I don't want to like him. And then he goes on the boat." He said the words tumbling out fast, the dam finally breaking. "I don't want to wait for him. I already have to wait for... I already spent so long waiting. And he never... I don't want to do it again. Mom, I can't do the waiting again. It's the worst feeling in the whole world, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not." And Emily Parker pulled her son into her arms, right there on the kitchen floor, and held him while he cried, the way he almost never let himself cry. And she didn't tell him it would be okay, because she couldn't promise that. She just held him, and let him soak the shoulder of her shirt, and when the worst of it had passed, she pulled back, and held his wet face in both her hands. "Listen to me," she said. "Whatever you decide, you are not doing the waiting alone. Not this time. Whatever happens with Nathan, whether you meet him or you don't, whether you like him or you hate him, whether he goes on the boat or he never does, you have got a mother who is not going anywhere. Ever. Do you understand me? I am the one grown up in this whole world who is never ever going to make you watch the driveway for me. And that will be true no matter what you decide about Nathan. So you get to choose from a safe place, baby. You get to choose knowing that I've already got you, no matter what matter." Liam looked at her for a long, long moment, his chest still hitching. "Okay," he said finally in a very small voice. "Okay." "What?" "Okay, I'll meet him," Liam said. "But I get to pick where, and it has to be the diner, the one with the good milkshakes, because if it's bad, I can just look at my milkshake and not have to look at him." Emily let out a sound that was half laugh and half sob, and pulled him back in, and pressed her lips to the top of his head. "The diner with the good milkshakes," she said. "It's a deal. I'll set it up." And she felt him nod against her collarbone, and felt his thin arms come up and hold on to her. And over the top of her son's head, she stared at the kitchen wall, and thought about a man across town who set out 2 coffee cups by accident, and a little girl who'd left a space in a drawing for a 4th person. And she thought for the first time, letting herself think it all the way through to the end, without flinching away, that maybe her old life, the one that had shattered, had only shattered to make room for something she'd been too scared to imagine. She didn't say it out loud. Not yet. Saying it felt like too much. But she held her son on the kitchen floor and let herself believe just a little, just for tonight, that the driveway might not stay empty forever. The diner was Liam's idea, But the timing was Nathan's, and he arrived 20 minutes early on purpose because he had learned a long time ago that the man who's already sitting down when you walk in is less frightening than the man who walks in after you. He took the booth in the back corner, the one with a clear view of the door, and he ordered nothing but a coffee, and waited, and he did the thing he did before every hard conversation of his life. He ran through what he was walking into out loud under his breath, the way he'd brief himself before a boarding. 9 years old, watches the driveway, doesn't trust the word later, thinks going and leaving are the same thing. Picked this place so he can look at a milkshake instead of me if it goes bad. Nathan turned his coffee cup a quarter turn on the saucer. Don't reach for him. Don't overpromise. Don't do the grown-up thing where you try too hard and he can smell it. Let him drive. Dawson had called him that morning, of course. Dawson always knew. Big day, Dawson had said. How do you always know? Because you've been weird for 3 days, and you only get weird before things that matter. What's the plan? There's no plan, Nathan had told him. That's the plan. You can't plan a 9-year-old. You show up, you tell the truth, and you let him decide whether you're worth his time. Dawson had been quiet a second. You know what's funny? That's the same advice you gave me before I met my wife's kids. Word for word. Yeah, well, Nathan had said. I'm consistent. You're terrified. That too. And now, here he was terrified, sitting in a vinyl booth, turning a coffee cup, watching the door. And when it finally opened, and Emily walked in with her hand on the shoulder of a small, thin, watchful boy, Nathan felt his heart do something it had not done since the day they put a wedding ring on his finger. He did not stand up fast. He did not wave. He did not do the big smile, big voice thing that grown-ups do at kids, the thing that makes a wary child's skin crawl. He just lifted one hand off the table an inch, a small acknowledgement, and let them come to him. Liam approached the booth the way a cat approaches a new room, sideways cataloging exits. He slid in next to his mother across from Nathan, and immediately picked up the laminated menu and held it up in front of his face, like a shield, exactly as he'd told her he would. Hi, Nathan said. Just that. Nothing else. There was a silence from behind the menu. Then a small muffled, hi. Emily started to say something, some smoothing over mom thing, and Nathan caught her eye and gave the smallest shake of his head. Let him drive. She closed her mouth. The silence stretched. The waitress came. Emily ordered a coffee. Nathan already had his. What can I get you, hon? The waitress asked the menu, since that was all she could see of Liam. The menu lowered about 2 inches. 2 wary eyes appeared over the top of it. The chocolate peanut butter milkshake, Liam said. The big one, with the whipped cream but no cherry. You got it, sweetheart. The menu went back up. Nathan waited until the waitress was gone, and then he said conversationally to the menu, No cherry, huh? You one of those... A pause. One of what? Anti-cherry. It's a whole thing. There's a whole group of people who think the cherry ruins it. The menu lowered another inch. The cherry does ruin it, Liam said with the sudden passion of a child who has strong opinions and rarely gets asked about them. It makes everything around it taste like cherry, and it soaks into the whipped cream. And it's not even a real cherry, it's like a weird fake red one. A maraschino cherry. Yeah, that. Liam frowned. It doesn't taste like a cherry at all. It tastes like red. It tastes like red, Nathan repeated, nodding gravely, like this was the most profound culinary observation he'd ever heard. You know, I've been trying to figure out what that flavor is my whole life, and you just nailed it. It tastes like red. That's exactly it. The menu came down all the way. Liam set it on the table, and for the first time, he actually looked at Nathan, really looked the full assessing stare, the one Emily had watched him aim at every adult who'd ever come near their family. Are you making fun of me? Liam said flatly. No, Nathan said, and he let the smile drop, let his face go serious and even. I don't make fun of people who are right, and you're right. The cherry ruins it. I've thought so for 41 years and never said it out loud because I thought I was the only one. Liam studied him for a long moment, running the words through whatever machine he ran everything through. Testing for mockery. Testing for the fake nice voice adults used. testing for the man who was performing being interested in a kid so he could get closer to the kid's mom. He didn't find it. Nathan had made sure there was nothing to find because Nathan wasn't performing. He'd meant every word about the cherry. Okay, Liam said finally, and the okay meant something. It meant provisionally, not lying subject to review, sorry. It went slow after that, and slow was good. Nathan had braced himself for it to go badly, and instead it went at the pace of a milkshake being consumed by a suspicious 9-year-old, which is to say, it went at the pace of something real. Liam asked his questions the way he asked all his questions, sideways guarded, pretending not to care about the answers. So you're in charge of a boat, Liam said, working the straw. A ship, yeah. What's the difference between a boat and a ship? Good question. General Rule A, ship can carry a boat, but a boat can't carry a ship. Ships are the big ones. Liam considered this. How big is yours? Long as about 2.5 football fields. The straw stopped. What? Yeah. That's not a boat, that's like a whole town. Feels like it sometimes, Nathan said. You've got a hospital on there, a dentist, a little store, a gym. Guys who do nothing but cook all day 3 meals for thousands of people. It's a floating town, you're right. And my job is basically to be the mayor of the town and make sure the town doesn't sink and everybody in it gets home to their families. Liam went quiet at that last part. Gets home to their families. Emily saw the word home land on her son and saw him decide not to react to it, saw him shove the reaction down and reach for another question. Do people ever fall off? Liam asked. Into the ocean. Sometimes. What happens then? Then somebody goes in after them, Nathan said, fast as they can, because in the ocean minutes matter. Who goes in? Nathan turned his coffee cup a quarter turn. Usually me, he said simply. Or somebody like me. The whole point of the job is you're the one who goes in. That's what the job is when you get down to it. Everybody else gets to stay on the ship. You're the one who goes in the water. Liam stared at him, and Emily watched something shift behind her son's eyes, a recalibration, a piece of the map being redrawn. Because Liam had spent his whole short life sorting men into a single brutal category, men who leave. And here was a man whose entire job, whose whole reason for existing, was the exact opposite. A man whose job was going in after people. A man who jumped toward the thing everyone else jumped away from. It didn't fit the map, and Liam was too honest a kid to pretend it did. That's kind of the opposite of leaving, Liam said slowly, mostly to himself, working it out loud. Going in after somebody. That's like the most staying thing there is. Nathan didn't answer right away. He understood that the boy had just said something enormous and that pouncing on it would ruin it. I never thought about it that way, Nathan said. But yeah, I guess it is. Fine. It lasted an hour, the milkshake summit, and by the end of it, something had happened that none of them named. Liam had asked 40 questions and gotten 40 straight answers, and had not once caught the man lying, or performing, or doing the math. And when Emily finally said they should probably get going, Liam did a thing that shocked her so badly she had to look away to keep her composure. He slid out of the booth, stood up, hesitated, and then stuck out his small hand across the table. Nice to meet you, Liam said stiffly, formally, the way you shake hands with a substitute teacher. But he did it. He offered his hand, and Nathan took it and shook it once firm, the way you shake hands with a man, not a kid. Nice to meet you too, Liam, Nathan said. The cherry ruins it. The corner of Liam's mouth twitched. Not a smile, but the ancestor of a smile. The place where a smile would grow if you gave it enough time. The cherry ruins it. Liam agreed and let go of the hand and walked toward the door, and Emily mouthed thank you over her son's head, and Nathan just nodded and turned his coffee cup a quarter turn and let out the breath he'd been holding for an hour. In the car, Liam was quiet for a long time. Emily didn't push. She'd learned that pushing sealed the vault. You had to wait and drive and let him decide when the words were ready. They were almost home when he finally spoke. He's not like Danny, Liam said. To the window. Not to her. It was the first time in 3.5 years her son had said his father's name out loud on purpose. Emily kept her hands very still on the wheel and her voice very level. "No. Danny always talked about himself," Liam said. "Even when I was little, I remember that. He talked about his job and his truck and the guys from work, and he never asked me stuff. Nathan asked me stuff, about the cherry and everything." Liam picked at the seatbelt. "And he didn't do the thing." "What thing?" "The thing where they pretend to like me because they like you." Liam's voice was very matter-of-fact, and it broke Emily's heart into pieces, because it meant her 9-year-old had a whole taxonomy of the men who'd pretended to like him, a whole practiced radar for the specific flavor of fake. "I can always tell when they're doing that. Nathan wasn't doing that. He actually got mad about the cherry. You can't fake getting mad about a cherry." Emily laughed wetly and reached over and squeezed his knee. "No," she agreed. "You can't fake the cherry." They drove another block. "Mom," Liam said. "Yeah, bud. If he goes on the boat." Liam swallowed. "The ship. If he has to go do the mayor thing and be gone for a long time." He was quiet a second, gathering it. "You said going and leaving are different. You said he told you that. That a guy who leaves stops thinking about you, and a guy who goes thinks about you every day and counts the days till he's back." "That's what he said." "How would I know?" Liam asked, and here his voice finally cracked. Here the armor finally showed the seam. "If he's gone, how would I even know which kind it is? They both look the same. It's just an empty spot either way." "That's what I keep. That's the part I can't figure out, Mom. From the driveway they look exactly the same." And Emily had to pull the car over. She couldn't drive and answer this. This was too important to answer at 40 miles an hour. She pulled into a parking lot and put the car in park and turned in her seat to face her son fully. "That's the smartest question anyone's asked me in years," she said. "And I'm going to tell you the truth, because I always tell you the truth. You're right. From the driveway they look the same. An empty spot is an empty spot. You can't tell from looking at it whether the person's coming back." Liam's face crumpled. "So here's how you know." Emily went on before he could spiral. "You don't know from the empty spot. You know from what happens around the empty spot. A guy who leaves a guy like Danny, the empty spot, just gets emptier. No calls, no letters. The birthday comes and there's nothing. You watch the driveway and there's nothing. And there keeps being nothing, and the nothing is the answer." She held his gaze. "But a guy who goes fills the empty spot up from far away. He writes. He calls when he can, which on a ship isn't always, but when he can he does. He remembers the birthday, even from the middle of the ocean. He sends the thing. He counts out loud how many days are left. The empty spot's still empty. You still can't hug him, and that part's still hard. That part's always going to be hard, but it's a loud empty. It's an empty that's full of a person trying to reach you. And Danny's empty was a quiet empty. That's the difference, baby. That's how you know. Not from the driveway, from how loud the empty is." Liam sat with that for a long time. Emily watched him take it in, turn it over, test it the way he tested everything. "A loud empty," he repeated slowly. "A loud empty." And Danny was a quiet empty. "Danny was the quietest empty there is," Emily said. "Danny was so quiet you could have forgotten he was ever there at all if it didn't hurt so much." Liam nodded slowly. And then he said something that Emily would remember for the rest of her life, would take out and look at on hard nights for years to come. "I'd rather have a loud empty," he said, "than a guy who's here but doesn't ask about the cherry." Emily reached over and pulled her son across the center console into a hug that was mostly awkward angles and seatbelt, and he let her, which he almost never did, and she pressed her face into his hair and didn't say anything at all, because there was nothing left to say that would improve on what her 9-year-old had just figured out entirely by himself. That night, after both kids were down, she called Nathan and told him about the parking lot. About the loud empty and the quiet empty. About I'd rather have a loud empty than a guy who's here but doesn't ask about the cherry. There was a long silence on the line. So long she checked to make sure the call was still connected. Nathan. "I'm here," he said, and his voice was thick. Give me a second." She gave him the second. She could hear him breathing, hear him getting himself back under control, and it moved her more than she could say. This decorated commander, who could stand in a hurricane sitting in his kitchen, undone by a sentence a 9-year-old said about a milkshake. "Nobody's ever explained me to a kid like that," he finally said. "The loud empty. That's Emily, that's the whole thing. That's every deployment I've ever done. That's Claire's whole illness the 4 months I was gone, calling her from the ship on the one phone with the 15-minute limit and telling her I loved her and counting the days. That was a loud empty. I spent 4 months making the loudest empty I could, and it still wasn't enough. I still wasn't there when—" He stopped, steadied. "You just took the worst, most complicated thing about my whole life and my whole job, and you made it something a 9-year-old could hold in his hand. A loud empty. I'm going to think about that for the rest of my life." "He came up with the cherry part himself," Emily said. "I want that on the record. That was all Liam." "Put it on the record," Nathan said, laughing wetly. "A guy who's here but doesn't ask about the cherry. God, he's 9. He's 9, Emily." "He's 9 going on 60, Emily said. "The driveway aged him." The line went quiet again, and it was a different kind of quiet this time, a full one, a loud one. And Emily thought about her own lesson coming back to her, that the difference wasn't in the silence, it was in what filled it. This silence was full of a man 3 miles away who was there present reaching for her across it. "So he liked me," Nathan said, and there was something young and hopeful in it, something almost boyish under the commander's voice. "He liked you," Emily confirmed. "God help us all. He liked you. He said you can't fake getting mad about a cherry?" "You cannot," Nathan agreed solemnly. "It's the one thing that can't be faked." Grace was easier, of course. Grace was 5, and 5 hadn't learned to watch the driveway yet, and Grace met Nathan 2 weeks later. Liam's decision. Liam's timing. Liam, who declared over dinner one night out of nowhere. Grace can meet him. She'd like him. He's fine. As if he were signing off on a contractor. Emily nearly dropped her fork, and Grace, when she met Nathan at the park, took one look at this large, quiet man and marched straight up to him and announced, "My brother said you're fine, and you don't like cherries, and I'm allowed to show you the fast slide." "Is the fast slide the good one?" Nathan asked, crouching down to her level. "It's the best one, but you have to be brave," Grace said, deadly serious. "Are you brave?" "I'm okay at it," Nathan said. "I might need a demonstration." "I'll show you," Grace said, and grabbed his enormous hand in her tiny one with the total unquestioning trust of a child who had not yet learned that grown-ups could disappear, and dragged him toward the slide, and Emily stood on the grass next to her son and watched a Navy commander get bossed up a playground ladder by a 5-year-old. "She likes him," Liam observed. "She does. She doesn't even know she's supposed to check first," Liam said. And there was something complicated in it. A little bit of the old soul weariness, a little bit of grief for his own lost ability to just walk up and grab a hand. "She just likes people. She doesn't check." Emily put her arm around her son's shoulders. "You check," she said gently, "so she doesn't have to. You've been checking for her this whole time, haven't you? That's your job in your head. You check the grown-ups so Grace can be little." Liam looked up at her surprised, like she'd read something off him he didn't know was showing. "Somebody has to," he said quietly. "I know, baby," Emily said, and pulled him in against her side, and they watched Grace show Nathan the fast slide and Nathan go down it with his knees up around his ears, too big for it, folding himself into a child's world without complaint. And Grace shrieking with delight, and Emily felt her son slowly relax against her. 1 degree at a time, the vigilance easing out of his thin shoulders as he watched as he checked and found again nothing to be afraid of. It was Sophie who took the longest, and that surprised everyone because Sophie was the one who'd left the space in the drawing, the one who'd asked her father for a 4th person. But wanting a family in the abstract, it turned out was a very different thing than watching your father hold another woman's hand. And Sophie was 6 and 6 was old enough to feel the ground shift. She met Emily and the kids at Nathan's house. His call, and a big one, letting all of them into the small home where he and Sophie had built their careful two-person world with the angel drawn in the clouds. And Sophie was polite and quiet, and she watched Emily the way Liam watched everyone, and halfway through the afternoon, she disappeared, and Nathan found her in her room, sitting under the fading glow-in-the-dark stars, holding the framed photo of Claire from the beach. "Hey, Bug," he said, sitting down on the floor next to her. "What's going on?" Sophie didn't answer for a moment. Then she said in a small voice, "Is Emily going to be my new mommy?" Nathan chose his words the way he chose them for the hardest briefings of his life. "Would that be okay with you if she was, I don't know?" Sophie's chin wobbled. "If she's my new mommy, does that mean we forget the old one?" And there it was. The thing under the thing, the real fear, the same shape as Liam's, but cut from the opposite grief. Liam was scared of a loud empty becoming a quiet one. Sophie was scared that a new full would erase an old empty she'd worked so hard to keep. "Oh, baby, no," Nathan said, and he pulled his daughter into his lap, photo and all. "No, no, no. Come here, listen to me. Nobody is ever going to replace Mommy. Not ever. Mommy is always going to be your mommy forever up in the clouds, being an angel smelling like the yellow flowers. That never changes. That's a spot in your heart that has Mommy's name on it, and nobody else can ever go there." "Then where does Emily go?" Sophie asked, muffled against his chest. "If Mommy's spot is full, Emily gets her own spot," Nathan said. "Your heart's not like a chair bug where only one person can sit. Your heart's like it's like our family drawing. Remember, you left a space, an empty space for a fourth person." Sophie went still. "For when we found them." "For when we found them," Nathan said. "Mommy's already in the drawing. She's the angel in the clouds. She's not going anywhere. She's drawn in permanent marker. Nobody can erase an angel. But you left an empty space, remember? A space that was still empty. And maybe I'm not saying for sure, I'm saying maybe Emily and Liam and Grace are what goes in the empty space. Not in Mommy's space, in the new space. The one you left open on purpose because you're smart and you knew we weren't done yet." Sophie pulled back and looked up at him, her whole face working through it. "So I don't have to pick," she said slowly. "Mommy in the clouds and Emily in the empty space. Both." "Both," Nathan said. "You never have to pick, Sophie. That's the thing about your heart nobody tells you when you're little. It doesn't run out of room. It just keeps making more." Sophie looked down at the photo of her mother, and then toward the door beyond which she could hear Grace laughing and Liam saying something, and Emily's low, warm voice answering the sound of a full house, a loud house, the opposite of the two-person quiet she'd lived in her whole remembered life. "Okay," Sophie said. "Emily can go in the empty space, but she has to know the rule. Mommy smelled like the yellow flowers. She has to know that. It's important." "You'll tell her," Nathan said, standing up and lifting his daughter onto his hip. "You'll tell her yourself. And I promise you, Bug, she is exactly the kind of person who'll want to know." And she was. When Sophie, shy and solemn, climbed into Emily's lap an hour later and whispered the most important fact she owned, "My mommy smelled like the yellow flowers," Emily didn't flinch, didn't deflect, didn't do the nervous thing new grown-ups did around a dead mother. She just gathered the little girl in and said softly, "Then we should plant some yellow flowers, so she can visit whenever she wants." And Sophie's face when she looked up, Nathan watched it from across the room, and had to turn away and pretend to be very interested in the coffee cups, both of which for the first time in 3 years were out on the counter on purpose, and neither of which had to go back in the cabinet. The yellow flowers went in on a Saturday in the spring, all 4 kids on their knees in the dirt along the side of Nathan's house. And it was somewhere in the middle of that afternoon, Grace covered in mud, Sophie carefully patting soil around each stem, the way her father had shown her. Liam quietly reading the back of the seed packet out loud, so everyone would know how deep to dig, that Nathan looked over at Emily and understood that the thing they'd both been too scared to name had already happened, without either of them's permission. They were a family, not officially, not on paper, but in the way that mattered, in the way the four kids were arguing about who got the watering can, they were already the thing Sophie had left the space for. "I'm gonna do something," Nathan said quietly, kneeling next to Emily in the dirt. "And I need you to not panic." Emily's stomach dropped the way it always did when a man said, "I need to tell you something." Old reflex. She was still learning that when Nathan said it, it didn't mean the floor was about to give out. "Okay," she said carefully. "I'm not going to propose to you today," Nathan said. "Relax. I can see you tensing up." He almost smiled. "But I want you to know it's coming. Not soon, but it's coming. I've known for a while. I knew the day Sophie told you about the yellow flowers, and you said we should plant some, and you didn't even blink. I knew right then." He pushed a seed into the dirt. "I'm telling you now, way ahead of time, because I don't ever want to surprise you with a big feeling. You've had enough surprises. You've had a lifetime of men springing things on you. So I'm going to be the guy who tells you what's coming before it comes. That's the whole point of me, Emily. I'm the loud empty even when I'm standing right next to you. You never have to wonder where I'm at." Emily looked down at the dirt so he wouldn't see her face do the thing it was doing. "You can't just say stuff like that," she said thickly. "In the yard, with mud on your hands, you can't." "I can actually," Nathan said. "That's the other thing about me. I say the true stuff out loud. I learned that the hard way." He was quiet a second. "There's a lot of things I didn't get to say to Claire because I thought there'd be more time. I'm not making that mistake twice. So when I know a thing, I say it. And I know I'm going to marry you. So there it is. Said out loud, in the yard, with mud on my hands." And Emily Parker, who had spent 4 years training herself to expect nothing, sat in the dirt next to a man who told her the truth before she could brace for it and let herself for one whole minute want everything. It was 2 weeks later that the call came. Nathan was in the kitchen making pancakes a Sunday thing. Now all of them, the two houses folding into one on weekends more and more often, when his phone rang with the tone he knew in his spine before his brain caught up. The tone that meant the Navy. Sophie was setting the table. Grace was narrating the pancakes. Liam was reading the syrup bottle. Emily was pouring coffee into the 2 cups that lived on the counter now and never went back in the cabinet. Nathan looked at the phone. Then he looked at the room full of children and the woman with the coffee pot. And for one selfish half-second, he considered not answering. He answered. "Cole," he said, and walked out to the back step and pulled the door shut behind him. And Emily watched him go through the window over the sink and felt the temperature of the whole morning change. He was out there for 11 minutes, Emily counted. She didn't mean to count, but she counted the way she'd counted a lot of things over the years, days, dollars. The number of Sundays Liam watched the driveway. When Nathan came back in, his face was doing the thing she'd never seen it do. His face, which was always so steady, so certain, was trying to be steady and certain and not quite managing it. "Kids," Emily said before he could speak because she could read a room and she could read this one. "Take your pancakes to the living room. TV's allowed. Go on." "On the couch." Grace gasped because eating on the couch was forbidden, and the fact that it was suddenly allowed told all 4 children that something was happening, and the 2 older ones, Liam and Sophie, the 2 who'd been aged early by their particular griefs, looked at each other and then at the grown-ups, and gathered up the little ones and went because they knew. They always knew. When they were gone, Emily set down the coffee pot. "Tell me," she said. "The window moved up," Nathan said. "It's not preliminary anymore. It's real. It's orders." He set his phone on the counter face down like he couldn't stand to look at it. 6 months. Maybe a little less if things go well, maybe a little more if they don't. And it's not 4 months out anymore, Emily. It's 3 weeks. The kitchen went very quiet. The kind of quiet Emily had spent her whole life dreading. The quiet, empty kind. 3 weeks, she said. 3 weeks. She'd known this was coming. He'd told her it was coming the very first phone call before she'd ever let him meet Liam. He'd told her because he was the man who told her things before they happened. She'd built the whole relationship around the knowledge that this call would come someday. She'd told herself she was ready. She was not ready. You are never ready. Knowing the wave is coming does not stop the wave. Okay, Emily said, and her voice came out flat and controlled, the old survival flatness, and she hated it. She hated that her first instinct was still to strip the feeling out and go into logistics mode. Okay, 3 weeks. So we have 3 weeks. To get ready, to figure out the kids. We have to figure out how to tell the kids. Emily. And because Liam. God, Liam. This is the exact thing, Nathan. This is the thing I said. This is the thing. I built the whole wall around the whole line I drew. I said, don't let him in until you're sure. And he's in. He's all the way in. He shook your hand and he said, you can't fake the cherry. And he told me he'd rather have a loud empty. And now you're going to be a literal empty. You're going to be gone for 6 months, and he's 9. And he's going to think, Emily. Nathan crossed the kitchen and took her by both shoulders gently. And she realized she'd been talking faster and faster, spiraling the panic she'd been outrunning for 4 years, finally catching her in her own kitchen on a pancake Sunday. Breathe. Look at me. Breathe, she breathed. It shook on the way in. Here's what's not going to happen, Nathan said low and even. His commander's voice, the one that had steadied 100 sailors in 100 storms. I am not going to become a quiet empty. That is not on the table. That is the one thing I can promise that boy and mean with my whole life. I told you from the first phone call, going and leaving are different in exactly one way. And I am going to spend the next 6 months proving that difference to your son every single day I can reach him. I will write. I will call whenever the ship lets me, which won't be every day and sometimes won't be for a week. And I need you both to understand that ahead of time so the silence doesn't scare you. But every single time I can reach him, I will. His birthday's in month 4. I already know that. I already put it in my head. I will move heaven and earth to get something to that kid on his birthday, even if I'm in the middle of the ocean. Do you hear me? Emily nodded, her jaw tight. But here's the part you're not going to want to hear, Nathan said, and his hands tightened on her shoulders. We can't do it the easy way. We can't sit those kids down and give them the soft version. Nathan's going on a little trip. He'll be back before you know it. Don't worry about a thing. We can't lie to them to make the next 3 weeks comfortable, because Liam will know. That kid can smell a comfortable lie from across the county. If we soft pedal this, if we pretend it's small, he'll know we're managing him, and the second he knows we're managing him, he'll decide the truth is even worse than what we're saying, and he'll go back behind the wall, and this time he'll build it thicker and it'll have my name on the bricks. So what do we do? Emily whispered. We tell him the truth, Nathan said. The whole ugly truth. That I have to go. That it's going to be hard. That 6 months is a long time, and it is a long time. I'm not going to insult him by pretending it isn't. And then we give him the thing his father never gave him. We give him the loud empty. We show him what it looks like up close in real time for 6 months. We let him find out, not from a speech, from evidence that a man can be gone and still be there. Nathan's voice caught. It's the only gift I can give him that's worth anything, Emily. I can't give him a dad who never leaves. Nobody can give a kid that. It's a lie every time. But I can give him a dad who leaves and comes back and stays in touch the whole way through, and proves that the empty spot in the driveway isn't the whole story. That might be the most important thing anybody ever teaches that boy. And I don't get to teach it to him if I lie to him now to make 3 weeks easier. Emily stared at him, and slowly the panic in her chest reorganized itself into something else. Not calm. Not anything as clean as calm, but purpose. A thing to do. A right way through. He picked you, she said quietly. You know that he picked you. I gave him the choice, and he picked you. And I swore on Grace's name that I'd never let a man do to him what Danny did. And now you're going to leave, and I have to look him in the eye and tell him the man he picked is leaving, and trust that you're right, that this is different, that going isn't leaving. That 6 months of a loud empty is a gift and not a wound. Her voice broke. That's a lot of trust, Nathan. That's the most trust I've put in a man since the last one broke it. I know, Nathan said. And I'm not going to tell you it's safe. I'm going to tell you it's true. Those aren't the same thing. Safe would be me disappearing right now before the kids get more attached and letting you tell them it didn't work out. Safe would be me being one more grown-up who didn't stick. That's the safe move, and it's the coward's move, and I'm not going to make it. He pulled her in against his chest. True is harder. True is me getting on that ship and doing the loud empty for 6 months and asking a 9-year-old to trust me from 3,000 miles away. True could still hurt him. I can't promise it won't. But I can promise that if it hurts him, it'll be an honest hurt, the kind you can heal from, and not the poisoned kind his dad left him. That's the difference. That's all I've got. Emily stood in his arms in the kitchen with 4 children eating pancakes on a forbidden couch in the next room, and she made the decision that would define the next 6 months of all their lives. Okay, she said into his chest. We tell him the truth. All of it. Together. They told all 4 kids together that afternoon, because Nathan said the little ones deserved to hear it straight too in their own way, and because Liam should never feel like he was being singled out for the scary version. Grace didn't fully understand. She heard Nathan has to go away for his job on the big ship and asked if he could bring her back a whale, and Nathan said he'd try his best to bring her something from the ocean, and Grace decided this was acceptable and went back to her coloring, and that was the mercy of being 5. Sophie understood better, because Sophie had done this before, in the years before she could remember, and something in her cellular memory knew what a deploying father meant. She got very quiet, and she climbed into Nathan's lap and put her face in his neck and said, Is this like when you went away when I was little? Is this the kind where you almost didn't come back? And Nathan held her and said, No, Bug. This is the regular kind. This is the kind where I always come back. That other time was a special sad thing about Mommy being sick. This is just Daddy's job, and Daddy's job I come home from. I promise. And Sophie, who trusted her father, completely believed him, and that was its own kind of heartbreak, because Nathan knew he was making a promise about coming home that no deploying sailor can actually guarantee, and he made it anyway, because sometimes love requires you to promise the thing you can't control, and then spend every day of 6 months making sure you're not proven a liar. And then there was Liam. Liam heard the whole thing without moving a muscle. He sat on the floor with his back against the couch, and he listened to Nathan explain the deployment, the 6 months, the 3 weeks, and his face did nothing at all, which Emily knew better than anyone alive was the most dangerous thing his face could do. A crying Liam was a Liam you could reach. A blank Liam had already gone behind the wall. When Nathan finished, there was a long silence. Okay, Liam said, and he got up and started to walk to his room. Liam, Emily said. I have homework, Liam said, not turning around. His voice was perfectly even, perfectly flat. The quiet, empty voice. It's fine, I get it. He has to go do his job. It's fine. Bud. It's fine, Mom. And the bedroom door clicked shut. Not a slam. The quiet click. The worst sound in Emily's world. Emily started to get up to go after him, and Nathan caught her hand. Let me, he said. Nathan, I know him, he's not going to. I know you know him, Nathan said, but I'm the one who's leaving, and this is my mess to sit in, not yours. You've been the one who sits in his messes for 9 years. Let me take this one, please. He was already standing. If he throws me out, he throws me out, and you can go in after. But he picked me, Emily. You said it yourself. He picked me. So he's mine to answer to now. Let me answer to him. Emily looked at him for a long moment, and then she let go of his hand. Nathan knocked on Liam's door. There was no answer which he'd expected. He didn't open it. I'm not coming in, he said through the door. You didn't say I could come in, so I'm not coming in. I'm just going to sit right here on the floor in the hallway on the other side of this door, and I'm going to talk, and you don't have to answer, and you don't have to open the door, and if you want me to stop talking and go away, you say so, and I'll go. Okay. Silence. Nathan lowered himself to the hallway floor, his back against the wall next to the door, and he started to talk. When I was a little older than you, Nathan said, my dad went away. Not the Navy. He worked construction big projects, the kind where he'd be gone for months at a time in other states building bridges and highways and things. And I hated it. I hated it so much. I used to think if he really loved us, he'd find a job here. He'd stay. A dad who really loved you wouldn't leave to go build some bridge in another state. He paused. You ever think that if the person really loved you, they'd find a way to stay? Silence from behind the door. But it was a listening silence now. Nathan could feel the difference. He'd spent his whole life learning to read the quality of silences. I thought it for years, Nathan went on. And I was mad at him for years. And then one summer when I was about 13, he took me with him to a job site. 3 states away, a bridge over this big river. And I watched him work. And I watched the other men, his crew, and I watched the way they were around him. They needed him, Liam. Not the way you need a dad. The way you need the guy who knows what he's doing when everything's about to go wrong. There was this moment a cable came loose and it was dangerous, guys could have gotten hurt. And everybody froze, and my dad didn't freeze. My dad went toward it. He fixed it. And I stood there, 13 years old, and I finally understood something. He was quiet a moment. He wasn't leaving us to go build bridges. He was building bridges so that 100 other families could drive over that river safe. And he was also somehow still ours, still writing me letters every week, still calling on Sundays, still remembering my birthday from 3 states away. He was gone, and he was ours at the same time. I just couldn't see it until I saw the whole thing. Silence. But the door had not told him to stop. So he didn't stop. I'm not telling you this to make you feel better, Nathan said. I know it doesn't make you feel better. Nothing anybody says right now is going to make you feel better, and I'd be lying if I pretended it would. And I told your mom the one thing I'd never do is lie to you to make things easier. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you 6 months isn't long. 6 months is forever. When you're 9, 6 months is a whole geological age. I know that. I remember it. I'm not going to insult you by pretending it's short. He heard something behind the door. A shift. A body moving closer to the wood. Here's what I'm going to tell you, Nathan said. And it's the only thing I've got that's worth anything. Your mom told me you said something, in the car after the diner. She told me you said you'd rather have a loud empty than a guy who's here but doesn't ask about the cherry. His voice went rough. That's the smartest thing anybody's said to me in my whole life, Liam, and I've been carrying it around for weeks. A loud empty. You made that up. You figured that out all by yourself, and it's right, and I'm going to prove it to you. Because that's exactly what the next 6 months are going to be. A loud empty, the loudest empty you ever heard in your life. Silence, but closer now, right at the door. I'm going to write you letters, Nathan said. Not your mom, you. Your own letters with your name on the front that nobody else gets to read unless you want them to. And they're going to come slow because mail on a ship is slow. Sometimes a bunch come at once, and then nothing for 2 weeks, and I need you to know that ahead of time so the nothing doesn't scare you. The nothing isn't me forgetting you. The nothing is just the ocean being big. Okay, and I'm going to call when I can, and sometimes I won't be able to, and that's not me choosing not to. That's just the ship. And your birthday. Your birthday's in month 4. I already know it. I already wrote it down. I already know exactly what I'm doing about it, and I'm not going to tell you what, because it's a surprise. But I need you to just trust me one time. One time. On the birthday. Just wait and see. A long silence. And then muffled through the door so quiet, Nathan almost missed it. Danny didn't come on my birthday. Nathan closed his eyes. I know. 3 years. He didn't come. Not once. And he wasn't even on a boat. He lived like 20 minutes away, and he didn't come. I know, buddy. So how do I know? And here the flat voice finally cracked, finally broke wide open, and Nathan heard the tears come through the wood. How do I know you're not going to be another guy who's 20 minutes away and doesn't come? Except worse, because you'll be 1,000,000 miles away, so you'll have a reason, and it'll still just be an empty spot, and I'll be waiting again. I'll be doing the waiting again, and I told Mom I wasn't going to do the waiting again. and Nathan Cole made a decision sitting on that hallway floor that he would keep for the rest of his life. "Open the door," Nathan said. "Please, just open it. You don't have to come out. I don't have to come in. Just open it so I'm not saying this through wood." A long pause. And then the handle turned, and the door opened, and Liam stood there, with his face wet and furious and terrified, 9 years old, and holding himself together with both hands. And Nathan stayed sitting on the floor. Didn't stand up, didn't loom, stayed down at the boy's level the way Emily always did, and looked up at him. "Here's how you know," Nathan said. "You've been asking the wrong question, and it's not your fault because nobody ever gave you the right one. You keep asking how you'll know I'm coming back, and you can't know that. Not for sure. I'd be lying if I said you could, and I won't lie to you. Ships have accidents. The ocean's the ocean. I can't promise you nothing bad will ever happen to me, and any grown-up who promises a kid that is a liar." He held Liam's eyes. "But that's not the real question. The real question isn't whether I'll come back. The real question is whether I'll reach for you the whole time I'm gone. And that one I can promise. That one's 100% in my control, and I promise it to you on everything I've got. Every single day I can reach you, I will. Not because I have to. Not because your mom's making me. Because I want to. Because somewhere in the middle of the ocean, there's going to be a guy thinking about a kid who taught him that the cherry ruins it, and counting the days till he gets home to argue about milkshakes in person." Liam's chin was shaking. "That's not the same as coming back." "No." Nathan agreed. "It's not. You're right. It's not a promise that I'll come back because I can't make that one honestly. It's a promise that I'll never stop reaching for you while I'm gone. And here's the thing, Liam. That's the only promise that matters. That's the one Danny broke." Danny didn't break a promise to come back. He never made one. What Danny did was stop reaching. He was 20 minutes away, and he stopped reaching. He let the empty go quiet. And that's the thing. The only thing that I am promising you will never ever happen with me. My empty is going to be loud. You are going to get so sick of how loud my empty is. You're going to be like, "God, another letter from Nathan, doesn't this guy ever stop?" And something happened then that Emily, listening from around the corner with her hand over her mouth, would remember forever. Liam laughed. Through the tears, through the terror, a small, wet, broken laugh, because the idea of being annoyed by too many letters, when his whole life had been defined by too few, was so absurd and so hopeful that it cracked the wall clean in half. "That's dumb," Liam said, crying and laughing at once. "Nobody gets sick of letters." "You will," Nathan said. "I write a lot of letters. I'm very boring. I'll tell you about the food on the ship, and it's terrible, and I'll describe it in detail. You'll beg me to stop." Liam wiped his face with the back of his hand, the exact gesture his mother used, and looked down at the man sitting on his floor and asked the last question, the smallest one, the one underneath all the others. "Do you promise?" Liam said. "That your empty will be loud? Do you actually promise?" "I promise," Nathan said. "On everything. On the yellow flowers. On the cherry. On the whole thing. My empty will be the loudest empty you ever heard, and I will keep it loud every single day until I'm standing in that driveway again, and even then, I'll probably keep writing letters just to bug you." He held out his hand from down on the floor. "Deal." Liam looked at the hand, and then instead of shaking it, he did something that made Nathan's throat close completely. He stepped forward and awkwardly, stiffly, like a kid who'd half forgotten how he hugged him, dropped down and wrapped his thin arms around Nathan's neck and held on the way. Grace held on the way. Kids hold on when they've decided to stop checking and just trust. "Deal," Liam said into his shoulder. And Nathan wrapped one arm around the boy who had picked him and reached the other hand out blindly toward the hallway where he knew Emily was standing, and she came and knelt down and took it. And the three of them stayed there on the floor outside a 9-year-old's bedroom, 3 weeks from a 6-month goodbye, holding on to the fragile, terrifying, chosen thing they'd built. And from the living room, Grace's voice floated in, wanting to know if the whale Nathan was bringing back could sleep in her room, and none of them could answer because none of them could stop crying long enough to laugh. The 3 weeks went the way that borrowed time always goes too fast, and then all at once, and then gone. Nathan spent every hour he could steal at the house, and the house had quietly, without anyone deciding, it become the house, the two families collapsing into one under the pressure of the coming goodbye. He taught Liam to throw a real spiral in the backyard. He let Grace paint his nails a color she called mermaid, and wore it to the base and told no one why. He planted more yellow flowers with Sophie. And every night, after the little ones were down, he sat with Liam at the kitchen table and did the thing he'd promised. He showed the boy in advance exactly what the loud empty was going to look like. "This is the address," Nathan said, writing it out on an index card in his blocky, careful hand. "It's long and it's weird, and it's got a bunch of numbers because it's a ship, not a house. You send a letter, here it goes on a plane, then a boat, then a helicopter, then eventually it finds me. Takes a while, sometimes weeks. So don't think I didn't write back just because you don't hear anything for a while. The letters are always coming. They're just slow." Liam took the index card like it was made of glass. "How many letters are you going to write me? How many do you want?" Liam thought about it the way he thought about everything. A lot, he decided, but real ones. Not just, "Hi, how are you, love, Nathan." Real ones, with stuff in them. "With stuff in them," Nathan agreed. "You got it. I'll tell you about the ship, the terrible food, the guys I work with. There's a guy named Dawson. He's my best friend. I'll tell you the stupid stuff he does. It'll be like a story that comes in pieces. Every letter's a chapter." "A story in pieces," Liam repeated, and Emily, washing dishes at the sink with her back to them, had to grip the edge of the counter because her son, her guarded driveway. Watching wall-building son said it like a kid being handed a gift he couldn't quite believe was really his. The last night before the last day, Emily couldn't sleep, and she found Nathan in the kitchen at 2 a.m, sitting at the table with the 2 coffee cups in front of him, both empty, just looking at them. "Can't sleep either," she said. "No." She sat down across from him. "Talk to me. What's going on in there?" Nathan turned one of the cups a quarter turn on the table. "I've done this a lot of times," he said. "Deployments. I've said a lot of goodbyes. Before Claire it was easy, nothing to leave behind but an empty apartment. With Claire it got harder, and after it was Sophie, and leaving Sophie was the hardest thing I ever did every single time." He looked up. "But I've never had this. I've never had a whole house full. I've never had a 9-year-old who's watching me leave to see if I'm the kind who comes back. I keep running the scenarios. That's what I do. It's the job, you run the scenarios. And there's one I can't stop running." "Which one?" "The one where I do everything right," Nathan said quietly. "Where I write every letter, make every call, do the loudest. Empty anybody's ever done, and something happens. Something out of my control. The ocean does what the ocean does. And that boy stands in the driveway, and the empty goes quiet, not because I chose it, but because I couldn't help it. And he learns the exact lesson I was trying to unteach him, that everybody leaves, that it doesn't even matter if they mean to." Nathan's jaw worked. "I keep thinking, what if the most loving thing I ever did for that kid turns out to be the thing that breaks him the rest of the way? What if I should have stayed the coward? What if Safe was right?" Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she reached across the table and took the coffee cup out of his hands and set it aside and took both his hands in both of hers. "Can I tell you something my grandmother told me?" she said. "When Danny left, when I was sitting exactly where you're sitting, 2 a.m, running the scenarios, thinking I'd ruined my kids' lives by picking the wrong man." She held his hands tight. She said, "You don't get to protect people from being alive." She said, "You can't love somebody halfway to keep them safe, because halfway love does its own kind of damage. The kid grows up and can feel that you held back, that you were always keeping one foot out the door, and that teaches them something worse than loss. It teaches them that they weren't worth the risk." Emily's voice was steady now, steadier than it had been in weeks. "You showing up all the way loud empty and all. Even if the worst thing happens, even if the ocean takes you, and I have to raise these 4 kids and tell them about you, that boy will still have had 6 months of learning that a man can love him out loud from across the world. That's not nothing, Nathan. If the worst happens, that's not a lesson that breaks him. That's a lesson that saves him. Because someday he's going to love somebody, and he'll know how to do it all the way because you showed him. Even if you're gone. Especially if you're gone. Nathan looked at her for a long time. "How are you the strong one right now?" he said. "I'm the one who's supposed to—" "I've had more practice at goodbye than you'd think," Emily said. "I just usually do it about people who don't deserve it. This is the first time I've had to say goodbye to somebody worth missing. Turns out that's easier. The missing's worse, but the goodbye's easier. Because I'm not standing here wondering if you'll be back to being yourself. I know who you are. You're the guy who goes in the water. You've been the guy who goes in the water your whole life. I'm not scared you'll change. I'm just scared of the ocean, and I can't do anything about the ocean." She squeezed his hands. "So I'm going to do the thing I can do. I'm going to keep the empty loud from this end too. Every day. The kids and me, we're going to fill your 6 months so full of us that you won't have room to be lonely. That's my job while you're gone. You reach for us, we reach for you, loud, empty from both ends." Nathan brought her hands up and pressed them against his mouth and held them there. And neither of them said anything for a long time, and the 2 coffee cups sat on the table between them, both empty, both waiting. The morning of, they didn't do it at the base. Nathan had asked for that. No pier, no crowd, no band, no big Navy goodbye with the cameras and the other families. He said goodbye to the kids at the house in the kitchen over pancakes because he wanted the last thing to be normal, the last thing to be Sunday, even though it was a Tuesday. Grace gave him a drawing of a whale to take on the ship, "So you don't forget what to bring me." Sophie, who was going to stay with Emily and Liam and Grace the whole 6 months, the 2 houses now permanently one, gave him the framed photo of Claire from the beach. "Take Mommy," Sophie said very seriously. "So she can watch the ocean with you. She likes the ocean, and bring her back." Nathan knelt down and took the photo, and his hands were not steady. "I'll bring her back, Bug. I'll bring you all back. That's the whole job, remember, I always come home." And then it was Liam. Liam had been quiet all morning, and Emily had watched him with her heart in her throat, waiting to see which Liam was going to show up for the goodbye, the one behind the wall, or the one who'd hugged Nathan on the bedroom floor. He'd been swinging between them for 3 weeks. She didn't know which one would win when it counted. Liam walked up to Nathan, and Nathan crouched down to his level, and for a second they just looked at each other. "So," Liam said. "So," Nathan said. "The letters. The letters start today. I'll write the first one on the plane, before I'm even on the ship. And they'll be slow. They'll be slow, sometimes weeks. The slow isn't me forgetting. The slow is the ocean being big," Liam finished. "I know, you said, like 100 times. I'll say it 100 more. Liam nodded. His jaw was tight. And then, quietly, he reached into his pocket and pulled something out and held it in his closed fist for a second, like he was second-guessing it, and then he opened his hand. It was a small plastic army man. The green kind from a bag of 100, the kind every kid has. This one was posed running one arm forward. "It's dumb," Liam said quickly. "You don't have to take it, it's a guy running. And you said your job is you're the one who goes in the water. You go towards stuff when everybody else goes away from it. So it's a guy running towards stuff. And I thought you could keep it, on the ship. So you remember to come back and keep the empty loud." His face was red. "It's dumb, never mind." Nathan looked at the little green army man in the boy's open palm, and Emily watched this decorated commander, this man who had held ships steady through hurricanes, come completely undone in his own kitchen over a plastic toy worth about a penny. "Liam," Nathan said, and his voice was wrecked. "That's not dumb. That's the best thing anybody's ever given me. It's a penny toy. It's the best thing anybody's ever given me, Nathan repeated, and he took the little army man and closed his fist around it and held it against his chest. I'm going to keep this in my pocket every single day. Every day. When I'm scared, when I miss you guys, when the empty gets hard to keep loud, I'm going to put my hand in my pocket and feel the guy running, and I'm going to remember there's a kid at home who gets it. Who gets what I do. Who made me a promise back. He held Liam's eyes. Because that's what this is, right? This is you keeping your empty loud too. This is you reaching back. Liam's chin crumpled. I don't want you to go, he said, all the walls gone now, just a 9-year-old at the end of it. I know you have to. I know it's your job. I know going and leaving are different. I know all of it. I don't want you to go. I finally gotta... And he stopped because the next word was the biggest word, the word he'd never once said about any man, and he couldn't get it out. I know, Nathan said, pulling him in. I know, buddy. Me neither. I don't want to go either. That's how you know it's real, that it hurts this much. You don't cry about goodbye to people who don't matter. It hurting this bad, that's the loud empty already starting. That's the proof. Liam held on to him and cried, and Nathan held on and let him. And over the boy's shoulder Nathan found Emily's eyes, and she came and put her arms around both of them, and Sophie and Grace piled in too, all 6 of them in a knot in the kitchen, and for one long minute nobody let go of anybody. And then Nathan stood up and wiped his own face, and picked up his bag, and did the hardest thing he'd done since he walked out of a hospital room 3 years ago. He left, but this time, and this was the whole thing. This was everything he'd been trying to teach a 9-year-old for 3 weeks. He left loud. At the door, he turned around and pointed at Liam and said, First letter, on the plane. Watch the mailbox in about 2 weeks. And Liam nodded, wiping his face, and Nathan pointed at Grace and said, 1 whale coming up. And at Sophie, I've got Mommy. She'll watch the ocean with me. And at Emily, he didn't say anything. He just looked at her and turned one imaginary coffee cup a quarter turn in the air, and she laughed through her tears, and then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. But it was a different click this time. Not the quiet empty click of a bedroom door. The loud empty click of a man who was already before the door even closed, reaching back. Chapter. The first 2 weeks were the hardest, because there was nothing. Nathan had warned them, the slow isn't me forgetting the slow, is the ocean being big, but knowing it and living it were different things, and Liam went back to the driveway. Not the front driveway. The mailbox. Every day after school, Liam walked to the mailbox and opened it, and it was empty, and every day Emily watched him from the window and had to physically stop herself from running out there, because Nathan had told her something before he left that she was holding on to like a rope. When the letters haven't come yet, Nathan had said, Don't rescue him from the waiting. I know you'll want to. But this is the part where he learns the difference. If you swoop in and distract him and manage his feelings, he never gets to find out that the letter actually comes. He has to do a little bit of the hard waiting, so that when the mail shows up, he learns the lesson. Not you telling him the lesson, him living it. Let him wait. Just be near him while he does it. So Emily didn't rescue. She just went and stood by the mailbox with him some days, not saying anything, and other days she watched from the window and let him do it alone. And on day 13, Liam opened the mailbox and went completely still. Emily saw it from the window, saw his whole body change. He pulled out an envelope. Even from the house, she could see it was thick, not a card, a real letter several pages. And she could see even from that distance the boy's name on the front in blocky, careful handwriting. Liam. His own name. His own letter. Liam didn't open it at the mailbox. He carried it inside like it was made of glass past his mother straight to his room and shut the door. But this time, when the door clicked, Emily wasn't scared of it, because she understood that some things a boy has to read alone. He was in there for an hour. When he came out, his eyes were red, but his face was not behind the wall. His face was open and stunned, and he was holding the letter against his chest. He wrote 4 pages, Liam said. Mom, he wrote 4 pages, about the plane and getting to the ship and the food you were. Right, Nathan, the food's terrible. He described the eggs and they sound disgusting. And Dawson did this thing where he... Liam was talking fast now, the words tumbling. A kid who'd been handed proof, actual physical proof of a thing he'd been afraid to believe. And at the end he said the army guy. He said he keeps it in his pocket, and he touched it like 4 times already when he got scared, and he said thank you, and he said... Liam's voice wobbled. He said the empty's loud, buddy. Can you hear it? Write me back and make yours loud too. Emily knelt down in front of her son. Are you going to write him back? I already started, Liam said. In my head, I have so much to tell him. I have to tell him about the spelling test, and about how Grace tried to flush a whole roll of toilet paper, and about how the yellow flowers are coming up, and... He stopped, looked at the letter, looked at his mother. It's real, he said very quietly, like he was afraid saying it too loud would break it. The loud empty, it's a real thing. He actually did it. He actually did it, Emily said. He said he would, and he actually did it. He's going to keep doing it, baby, for 6 months. That's who he is. And Liam looked down at the 4 pages in his hands. The first letter of his life, from a man who'd promised to write and then written, and Emily watched something knit back together in her son that had been broken since he was 5 years old, watched a wound that Danny had torn open, start finally to close, stitched, shut, 1 page at a time by a man 3,000 miles away, who kept a penny toy in his pocket and touched it when he was scared. The letters came in clusters after that, the way Nathan had promised 3 at once. Then nothing for 11 days, then 2 more, then nothing for a week. And every single time, the nothing stretched long. Emily watched Liam start to tense, start to drift back toward the wall, start to wonder. And every single time before the wall could go back up, the mail would come, and it would be there 4 pages, 5 pages. Liam on the front, and the wall would come back down. He was learning it, not from a speech, from evidence, from the thing itself happening over and over exactly the way Nathan said it would. The nothing wasn't forgetting. The nothing was the ocean being big. And on the far side of every nothing, the loud empty came back. Liam kept every letter in a shoebox under his bed. He wrote back to every one long ones 5 and 6 pages, and Emily mailed them off to the long weird address with all the numbers, and imagined them traveling by plane and boat and helicopter across the whole world to find a man in the middle of the ocean who would open them and read about spelling tests and yellow flowers, and a little sister who tried to flush a roll of toilet paper and would touch a penny toy in his pocket and would write back. And the phone calls when they came sudden, unpredictable sometimes at strange hours. A crackling connection from the other side of the earth. Those were the loudest part of the empty. Nathan would only get a few minutes, and he spent them the same way every time. A minute with Grace letting her tell him about her day. A minute with Sophie asking about the yellow flowers, telling her mommy was watching the ocean, and it was beautiful. A minute with Liam. And a minute with Emily. Always last, always the same 3 words at the end, that he'd started saying somewhere around week 3 and never stopped. Loud empty, Nathan would say right before the line cut out. From my end. Loud empty, Emily would say back. From ours. And the kids started saying it too. It became the thing they said. Grace said it to the whale drawing on the fridge. Sophie said it to the yellow flowers. Liam said it every night quietly to the shoebox under his bed before he went to sleep. Loud empty from my end, a 9-year-old sending his voice out across the ocean, to a man who'd taught him that an empty spot in the driveway wasn't the end of the story. That sometimes it was just the middle, and that the difference between the people who leave and the people who go is that the ones who go never ever stop reaching back. Month 4 arrived the way the calendar always said it would, and with it came Liam's birthday, and Emily had been dreading it for 11 weeks. Because Nathan had said back in the kitchen 3 weeks before he left, your birthday's in month 4. I already know it. I already wrote it down, and I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing about it because it's a surprise, but I need you to just trust me one time. And Liam had held on to that promise the way he held on to the shoebox under his bed. He'd mentioned it a dozen times over the months, casually pretending not to care the way he did with everything that mattered most. Nathan said he's doing something for my birthday. He said to trust him. And every time he said it, Emily's stomach tightened because she knew something Liam didn't. She knew the ship's communications had gone dark. It happened 2 weeks before the birthday. The letters stopped. The calls stopped. Not the normal slow, not the ocean being big, but a hard, total official silence. Emily got the notification the way military families do, the careful worded message that said only that the vessel was in a communications blackout for operational reasons, and that this was routine and expected, and no cause for alarm. Routine. Expected. No cause for alarm. She read those words 20 times, and none of them made her chest loosen even a little, because routine to the Navy and routine to a 9-year-old who'd been counting on a birthday promise were two entirely different things. She didn't tell Liam about the blackout. She didn't know how. What was she supposed to say? The man who promised you he'd never let the empty go quiet has gone quiet, but it's fine. It's routine. Don't worry. That was exactly the kind of comfortable lie Nathan had told her never to tell him. But the truth was worse. The truth was, I don't know when I'll hear from him. I don't know if the birthday thing will happen. I don't know anything. So she said nothing, and she watched the mailbox with her son, and every empty day, the count wound down toward a birthday that a man had promised from the other side of the world, and then vanished before he could keep. The night before his birthday, Liam couldn't sleep. Emily found him in the kitchen at 11 o'clock, sitting at the table where Nathan used to sit, turning an empty glass, a quarter turn on the wood, and her heart nearly stopped because he didn't even know he was doing it. He'd picked it up without knowing, a gesture absorbed from a man across the ocean. "Hey, bud," she said, sitting down. "You're supposed to be asleep. Big day tomorrow." "He hasn't written in a while," Liam said, not looking at her. "I know. It's been longer than usual. Longer than the ocean being big kind of longer." Emily was quiet. She would not lie to him. That was the one rule that had held this whole thing together for 4 months, and she was not going to break it the night before his birthday. "Yeah," she said. "It has been longer." Liam nodded slowly, still turning the glass. "Is he okay?" And there it was. The question under all the questions. Emily reached over and put her hand on the glass, stopping it, and waited until he looked at her. "I don't know," she said. "That's the honest answer, and I promised you I'd always give you the honest answer, even when it's the hard one." The ship went quiet. Not because anything's wrong, the Navy does this. Sometimes they go dark for a while for their own reasons, and it's normal, and it doesn't mean anything bad. But I won't tell you I've heard from him because I haven't. And I won't tell you the birthday thing is definitely going to happen because I don't know if it will. What I know is that he's out there. And what I know is who he is. "The guy who goes in the water," Liam said quietly. "The guy who goes in the water," Emily said. "The guy who kept his empty loud for 4 months without missing once. The guy who's got a penny army man in his pocket that he touches when he's scared. That guy doesn't stop reaching Liam. Not because a promise makes him. Because it's who he is. And I have to believe I choose to believe because I've decided to trust him the same way you decided to. That wherever he is right now, even if he can't reach us, he's reaching. The reaching didn't stop just because the letters did. You understand the difference." Liam thought about it for a long time. "The empty can be loud," he said slowly, "even when you can't hear it. Because he's still reaching. On his end. Even if the reaching can't get all the way here yet." Emily's throat closed. "Yeah, baby," she managed. "That's exactly it. That's exactly the difference. Danny's empty was quiet because he stopped reaching. Nathan's empty is loud even in the silence because he never would. The silence isn't him going quiet. The silence is just the ocean being really big this time." Liam nodded and let her walk him back to bed, and she sat with him until he slept, and then she went to her own room and did not sleep at all, because it was one thing to tell your son to trust, and another thing entirely to lie awake. Yourself staring at the ceiling, doing the exact math she'd sworn off, counting the silent days, running the scenarios, being a Navy family in the worst hour of it. Liam's birthday came gray and ordinary. There was school. There was a small party after just Doris from down the hall and Rachel and the 4 kids and a cake Emily had made at midnight because she'd needed something to do with her hands. Liam was good about it. He smiled at the right times. He thanked everyone. But Emily could see him doing the thing she'd watched him do his whole life, the thing she'd hoped he'd never have to do again. She could see him watching the door. Not the mailbox this time, the actual door. The way he used to watch the driveway on Sundays for a father who never came. He'd set himself up at the kitchen table where he could see it, and every time someone knocked, Rachel arriving, a neighbor dropping off a card, his whole body would go tight and hopeful, and then when it wasn't what he wanted, would settle back down into a careful, practiced disappointment that broke Emily's heart clean in two, because she recognized it. It was the driveway face. It was the face she'd spent 4 months believing he'd never have to make again. By 7 o'clock, the party was over. Doris went home. Rachel hugged Emily too long at the door and whispered, "He's out there, honey." He's out there, and left. And it was just the 5 of them, and the leftover cake, and a birthday that a man had promised and not delivered. And Emily watched her son start slowly to rebuild the wall, and she understood with a sick certainty that this was the moment. This was the exact thing she'd drawn the line to prevent all those months ago on the kitchen floor. Don't let him in until you're sure. Because Liam doesn't have the calluses. If he lets you in and you go, that's a wound he carries into every relationship for the rest of his life. She'd let Nathan in. Liam had let Nathan in. And now the empty had gone quiet on Liam's birthday, and she watched the lesson she'd fought so hard against start to teach itself to her son all over again. Everybody leaves, even the good ones, even the ones who promise. It doesn't even matter if they mean to. Bud, she started, not knowing what she was going to say, only knowing she couldn't watch that wall go up without trying. And the doorbell rang. Liam's head came up, and Emily saw him decide not to hope. She saw him physically refuse it, saw him keep his face flat because he'd been burned by the door 4 times already tonight, and he wasn't going to let it burn him a 5th. "I'll get it," Emily said, and her own heart was hammering, and she opened the door, and standing on the step was a young man in a delivery uniform holding a package, and Emily's heart dropped because it wasn't Nathan. Of course, it wasn't Nathan. Nathan was in a communications blackout in the middle of the ocean. "Delivery for Liam," the young man said, checking his tablet. "Says here it's got to be handed to the birthday kid directly. Weird instructions, but the sender was real specific." And Liam, who had been refusing to hope, came off the kitchen chair like a shot. The box was covered in stamps and custom stickers, and it had traveled. You could see that it had traveled. It was battered and travel-stained. And it had Liam written on the top in blocky, careful handwriting that all of them knew by heart now. And there was a second line under his name, and Liam read it out loud, his voice shaking. "Do not open until you're sitting down. N." Liam sat down right there on the floor of the entryway. Sophie and Grace crowded in. Emily knelt beside him, and Liam opened the box that a man had somehow sent from the middle of the ocean before the blackout timed across 4 months and 3,000 miles to land on this exact day, because Nathan Cole had written the birthday down and planned it out and mailed it weeks early, knowing the mail was slow, knowing he might go dark, building the loud empty so far in advance that it could reach across even his own silence. Inside was a letter, thick many pages. And under the letter, wrapped in a t-shirt, was a small carved wooden boat, hand-carved clearly, roughly by someone who was not a craftsman, but had tried anyway, sanded smooth in the places a thumb would rub. And glued to the deck of the little boat, standing at the front arm forward, was a small green plastic army man. A guy running. A guy going toward something. Liam made a sound Emily had never heard him make. "Read the letter," Sophie whispered. "Read it out loud, Liam, please." And Liam, with shaking hands, unfolded the pages and read. "Dear Liam," he read. "Happy birthday, buddy. 10 years old. Double digits. That's a big one." His voice caught, but he kept going. "I'm writing this early because I know the mail is slow, and I know there's a chance the ship goes quiet for a while around your birthday. Sometimes we go dark for work reasons, and I can't call or write, and I didn't want you to think even for 1 second that the quiet meant I forgot. So I'm mailing this way ahead of time. If it shows up on the right day, that's not luck. That's me months ago making sure the loud empty could reach you even if I couldn't. Mia. Emily put her hand over her mouth. I made you the boat myself. Liam read, and now the tears were coming spilling down his face onto the pages, but he didn't stop. It's not very good. Dawson laughed at it. But I wanted you to have something I made with my own hands out here thinking about you. I put your army man on the front of it. I hope that's okay that I glued it down. I know you gave it to me, but I wanted you to have him back for your birthday, standing on the front of a boat going toward stuff. That's you, Liam. You're the guy on the front of the boat. You've been going toward stuff your whole life, even when it scared you. You went toward me at that diner, even though every grown-up before me taught you not to. That took more guts than anything I do out here. Liam had to stop. He couldn't see the words. Emily gently took the pages from him. Can I? She asked. He nodded and leaned into her side, and she read the rest, her own voice barely holding. Here's what I want you to know on your birthday, Emily read. When your dad left, you learned that people leave. And you were right, some people do. But somewhere along the way you started to believe that was the whole truth about the world. That everybody leaves eventually, and the only smart thing is to never let anybody get close. And buddy, I need you to hear this from a guy who's spent his whole life watching people at their best and their worst. That's not the whole truth. It's a piece of the truth. The other piece, the bigger piece, is that some people go and reach back the entire time and come home. Both things are true, the leaving and the coming home. You just got taught the first one so hard and so young that you couldn't see the second one yet. Grace had gone very quiet. Sophie was holding the little wooden boat against her chest. So here's my birthday present to you. Emily read on, and it's not the boat's just wood. My real present is this, I'm proof. That's what I've been trying to be for 4 months. Every letter, every call, every day of the loud empty, I've been trying to be living proof that the second thing is real. That a man can go and still be yours. That an empty spot in the driveway isn't a verdict, it's just a middle chapter. You don't have to believe it because I said it. Believe it because I showed it to you. 4 months of showing it. And I've got 2 more months of showing it left, and then I'm going to walk through your front door, and the empty's going to stop being empty, and you're going to see with your own eyes that the coming home part was true the whole time. Emily's voice broke completely on the last lines, but she pushed through them because her son needed to hear them in a voice that loved him. You are worth coming home to Liam. That's the whole thing. That's what your dad got wrong, and it was his loss, not your fault, never your fault. You are worth crossing an ocean for. Don't ever let anybody, including the scared voice in your own head, tell you different. Keep your empty loud. I'll see you in 2 months. Love, Nathan. P.S. The eggs on this ship are still disgusting. You'd hate them. For a moment, nobody said anything. Liam sat on the floor of the entryway holding the wooden boat with the running man glued to the front, and he cried. Not the broken, scared crying from the bedroom floor 4 months ago, but a different kind, a kind Emily had never seen from him, a kind that had relief underneath it instead of terror. He didn't forget, Liam said. The ship went quiet, and he knew it might, so he sent it early. He planned it so the quiet couldn't win. He looked up at his mother, and his face was wide open, no wall anywhere in sight, 10 years old, and finally believing. Mom. He planned it so the quiet couldn't win. He did, baby, Emily said, pulling him into her lap, even though he was too big for it now. That's the loud empty. That's the whole thing. He made it so loud it could reach you across his own silence. That's how much he means it. And Liam pressed the little wooden boat to his chest and closed his eyes and said so quietly that Emily almost missed it, but she didn't miss it. She would never forget it, as long as she lived. Loud empty, from my end. I hear you. The blackout lifted 8 days later, and the first thing that came through was a call crackling and precious and short. And Nathan's first words were, "Did it get there? The box? Did it make it on the day?" And Liam, who grabbed the phone before anyone else could, said, "It made it." It made it on the exact day. The boat's on my nightstand. The guy's still running. I love it. It's the best thing anybody ever gave me." And Nathan on the other end of the line, 3,000 miles away, made a sound that his crew would have been astonished to hear from their commander, and said, "Happy birthday, buddy. 8 days late, but I told you the coming home part was real." The last 2 months went faster than the first 4, the way the end of a long thing always does. And then, on a morning in the fall, 6 months almost to the day, from the Tuesday he'd left over pancakes, Nathan Cole came home. They did it at the pier this time. Nathan had asked for the quiet goodbye, but Emily insisted on the loud homecoming. You kept it loud the whole way. We're going to end it loud. And so they were there, all of them in the crowd of families on the pier, when the ship came in. Grace was on Emily's hip with a sign she'd made that said, "Welcome home, Nathan," in letters that got smaller as she ran out of room. Sophie was clutching the framed photo of Claire, the one that had watched the ocean for 6 months and was coming home too. And Liam stood at the front of all of them, at the very edge of the pier, at the front of the boat, going toward it. The wooden boat with the running man tucked in his jacket pocket where he could touch it, the way Nathan touched the army man in his. And when the sailors started coming down the gangway, hundreds of them, a river of white uniforms, Emily felt Liam's whole body go tight with the old fear. What if he's not there? What if something happened? What if the empty was going to be quiet after all? And she put her hand on his shoulder, and she said the thing that had carried all 5 of them through 6 months. "He's reaching, baby. Can you feel it? He's reaching. Reach back." And then Liam saw him. Nathan Cole came down the gangway with his bag on his shoulder, and his eyes searching the crowd, and the second he found them, the second he found the boy standing at the front of the pier. Going toward him, he dropped the bag right there on the concrete, and he ran. And Liam ran too. He ran the way he'd never let himself run toward anyone, the way you can only run when you've stopped checking, stopped bracing, stopped keeping one foot out the door. He ran full tilt down the pier, and Nathan caught him and swung him up off the ground. This 10-year-old who was almost too big to swing and held him so tight that neither of them could breathe. And Liam had his face buried in Nathan's neck, and he was saying something over and over into the uniform, and Nathan pulled back just enough to hear it. And what Liam was saying again and again was, "You came back. You came back. You came back. I told you." Nathan said, his own face wet, holding the boy's face in both his hands. "I told you the coming home part was real. Did you ever doubt me?" And Liam, 10 years old, who 6 months ago had said that going and leaving looked exactly the same from the driveway, looked this man dead in the eye and said, "For a second, on my birthday, when the ship went quiet, for 1 second I doubted you." He swallowed. "And then the box came, and I never doubted you again." Nathan pulled him back in and reached out with one arm, the way he had that day in the hallway, blindly toward the family he knew was coming. And they came, Emily and Grace and Sophie, folding into him, 6 months of loud, empty collapsing, all at once into a knot of people on a pier who would not let go of each other. And Nathan reached into his pocket and pressed something into Liam's hand. The little green army man come home from the ocean, and Liam pulled the wooden boat from his own jacket, and they put the running man back on the front of the boat where he belonged, and it was whole again, the boy and the man and the boat and the runner, all of it home. Dolpito. Nathan married Emily the following spring under a trellis they'd built themselves in the backyard, next to a bed of yellow flowers that had come back thicker than ever. Sophie carried the framed photo of Claire down the aisle and set it in the front row in the seat of honor, so the angel in the clouds could watch, because nobody was ever replacing anybody, because a heart doesn't run out of room, because they'd all learned that the empty space in the drawing was never meant for someone to take Claire's spot, only to fill the space she'd left open on purpose. Grace was the flower girl and took it with deadly seriousness. And Liam stood up as Nathan's best man, 10 years old, in a small suit. And when the officiant asked if anyone had anything to say, Liam had asked ahead of time if he could, and Nathan had said of course. And so Liam pulled a folded paper from his pocket, a paper he'd written and rewritten a dozen times, and he read it in a voice that only shook a little. "When I met Nathan," Liam read, I didn't want to, because every grown-up I ever met before him, I had to check them. I had to figure out if they were going to leave. And I was really good at it, because I'd been doing it my whole life. He looked up at Nathan, then back at his paper. And then Nathan came, and I checked him harder than I ever checked anybody. For 6 whole months I checked him from 3,000 miles away. And he passed. Every single day he passed. He taught me a thing. He taught me that some people go and reach back the whole time and come home. And I didn't believe him at first because nobody ever came home before. But he showed me. He didn't just say it, he showed me for 6 months until I believed it. Liam's voice broke, but he finished. So today I'm not checking him anymore. Today I'm done checking. Because you don't have to check the guy on the front of the boat. The guy on the front of the boat always comes back. He folded the paper. I love you, Nathan. Welcome home. For good this time. And there was not a dry eye under the trellis. And Nathan Cole crossed the space between them and pulled the boy into his arms in front of everyone, and Emily watched her son, her guarded, wounded driveway. Watching son, who had learned at 5 years old that people leave and had spent 5 years believing it was the whole truth. She watched him hug his new father, without checking, without bracing, without keeping one foot out the door. And she knew with a certainty that no man had ever given her before, that the wound Danny left had finally fully closed. Because a family Emily had learned is not the thing you're born into. It's the thing you choose and keep choosing every single day in letters that cross oceans in penny toys, carried in pockets in yellow flowers, planted for a mother in the clouds, in a man who runs down a pier instead of walking. It's built out of 1,000 small moments of somebody reaching back when they didn't have to. And the greatest heroes are not the ones who cross oceans or hold ships steady in the storm. They are the ones who cross the ocean and come home and walk through the front door and never ever stop showing up. Nathan Cole had spent his whole life being the man who goes in the water. But the deepest water he ever crossed was the 6 inches between a frightened boy's wall and his own open hand, and he crossed it, and he stayed, and he never let the empty go quiet. And that is why, in a small house full of children's laughter, next to a bed of yellow flowers, a boy who once watched an empty driveway finally stopped watching and looked instead at the man across the dinner table and knew all the way down for the rest of his life that this was one door that was never going to close. They chose each other. Every single day they chose each other, and they never stopped.